Good morning, everyone. I don't know where. Yeah, the slides are there. Perfect. First of all, a couple of thank yous. Thank you to Hudl and Ed in particular for the opportunity to speak here. And then second of all, thanks for you all making the decision to come and listen to this quite dull northern accent for the next 25, 30 minutes. I'll try and keep it a bit upbeat and raise the tone and pitch every now and again, but just if anyone drops asleep, just give me a nudge. When I sat down to think about what I would want to come and sort of share today and think about this event when I've been as a delegate in the past, there's always so many amazing ideas, concepts that get put forward, and you always leave with pages and pages of notes. And when you're driving back or you're getting on the train, I actually then sometimes start thinking where it all fits together and how you're going to gain impact from it, start feeling a bit overwhelmed. And I think that sort of led me to thinking, at this current time now, there's probably never been more access to expertise, tools, information, products. And that's not just at the top end of the game now, that's whichever level you're working at. But I still think turning all that information in detail into some impact is still the hardest thing to do. And that really is what separates the good practitioners and leaders and people for the really good ones, in my opinion. So really what I'm just going to go through is some of my experiences and encouraging people in the room to think about how it applies to them in their context, and sort of, rather than me delivering some sort of lecture, which is not my style at all. So yeah, disclaimer, this is just my take on things. This isn't a one-way, only way sort of approach. I've worked in the industry now for 16, going on 17 years, and had a lot of negative experiences, some positive ones, things have worked and things haven't. So this is just really my perspective on my view of football, having worked in it for that period of time. For those of you who don't know, my background into sort of educationally was in psychology. Started as a really sort of young age, having an interest in why we think like we think. It was a bit of a passion of mine. The curiosity of wanting to question everything, questioning myself, question why others felt and thought like they did, people's behaviours, and really sort of how we can, a lot of really interested in biases and how we can be aware of our own and take others other people's into account when you're dealing with them. So that was quite an early influence, which I think shaped the rest of my career quite extensively. My entry point was at my local club, which is Huddersfield Town, as was just described. But the most important thing about Huddersfield Town was the person I met there, Steve Black, who was my mentor. Sadly, Blackie's no longer with us, and there'll be a lot of people in the room who know him and aware of him. But for those that don't, he was a real sort of leader in performance thinking at that time. And what he taught me most was about mentorship, was the people part of sport, and leadership and teamwork, and getting the best out of different people to be able to pull towards some sort of common goal. And I think that's still the most important thing now, and to get that grounding at that stage of my career was really important. Then fortunate to go on and work with some really cool people at the FA. Reece Long gave me a great opportunity to be involved there, and actually some of the technical sort of principles and philosophy that I've got sort of evolved there. Started when I was at Huddersfield. They were one of the early League One teams that were using Prozone. And when I look back to Prozone, it was quite, thinking of it a bit like a coaching tree. The amount of thinkers and people thinking in a different way at that time, if you look where they are now across the whole industry, I think that type of coaching tree I was fortunate to be involved in that. Huddersfield was very close to Leeds, where they were based, and I actually got I was probably involved in some of the early onset of using data directly with coaches and being impacting from sort of day one of being in there. Then as that transition to Hudl and working with Reece, actually to think more differently about the use of data and the impact and application of it around being a bit more bespoke and answering coaches' questions and using the tools at Hudl, Sports Code and all the rest of it to actually answer better questions that are actually going to have more impact. So I think from a technical perspective, that innovation, being bespoke, those two companies and people associated with those companies were really important as well in my development up till now. So 12 years of that sort of period of my career, really directly working with key decision makers at first team level and at senior level. which was a really good learning curve, like sharpening the tools of delivery and everything all the time. But I got a really amazing opportunity to go and work at a brilliant football club in Bolton Wanderers, which was a blank canvas really in terms of football leadership. They'd been through a period of obviously financial mismanagement, and it was a great opportunity to go in there. Started off as more of a technical director role, and that grew and expanded into sporting director. So yeah, all that sort of experience, I was really keen to try and test some of those things that I'd learned in more of a senior leadership role. So I'm going to ask you to imagine, you don't have to close your eyes, you can if you want, that you are a sporting director. You've got the official sporting director uniform that we all wear, nice quartersy, and you get into the room, it's Monday morning, you've got the technical board, 9 a.m, we've not won now in 6 games, there's a game tomorrow, and it's a heads-of meeting, updates, but we're also, because it's November, we're starting to plan for January. Ownership need promotion, and they need it, not bothered how, just need to get promoted. The head coach says it's a must-win, and X, we'll just call him X, he's our best player, and we need him to play. Come what may, I'm not really bothered if he's ready to start. If he's ready to, he needs to. Head of medical says, well, I'm not sure about that. You know, the data says he's not really ready. You know, if we risk starting him tomorrow, we could miss him for a bit longer. The head of recruitment then says, well, he's got interest in January, like we might be able to sell him. And the agent of the guy who we do like, we need to act on him because we're going to miss out on this quickly. The head of data says, the algorithm says we should sell him, but also if he plays tomorrow, we've got a better chance of winning. The CEO perks up and says, sounds like we should cash in really, but if we do win tomorrow, it's a big game, we've got going to really help with revenue, with hospitality, and we're behind budget, we need the money. And the head of academy says, well, hang on, our pathway KPI is down, like, I need player development, like, we need to get the minutes in. So he needs to get some minutes tomorrow, really. So as you can imagine here, not one person is sort of wrong in their lens. So what you're trying to do then in this situation is you're trying to translate between the people, you're probably trying to contextualize at times, you're certainly trying to mediate, and then afterwards you're probably trying to counsel as well. So there's quite a lot of things going on, and then you come out, you look at your phone, you've got a message from an agent that says, you can't start him, he's nowhere near ready. But by the way, my head coach client's got a really good fit for your club on the data. The press officer says Sky are asking if he's under pressure, and then to top it off, my daughter wants to know if I'm taking her to gymnastics tomorrow night. So you can imagine the sort of overload, and as each of these builds comes in with more information, more insight, whatever word you want to use, the decision actually probably gets harder to make rather than easier. So really wanted to try and put you in that situation, and as we focus on how do we use, not all those hats that I've just talked about, not even made the decision yet, not even had the discussion. So really interesting dynamic that you can only really experience by being there. Some really experiences that I was grateful for. So is more information, is it more problems? I don't believe, I'm quite passionate about this, and there's other people in the room that share it. Insight doesn't equal impact. Like, we can have all this brilliant information, we can have the best model, we can have the best data team, we can have the best analysis, but if we're not using it to impact, what's the point? And people in the room who have worked with me will hear me say that a lot. So stealing probably an idea from Austin. The idea we're going to talk about a little bit of a relationship between the two. I say a lot, if there's no impact, there's no point. If we're not impacting the grass, change your idea, do something else that's going to positively impact the grass. If we're spending too much money, ownership's money, do something that's going to impact. Obviously, this is the typical sort of educational slide, and a nice inverted U or bell curve. What I'm looking at is to start with how do the two ends of the spectrum look, so we know what sort of try to avoid. Obviously, at this side, you're talking gut feel, instinct, the eye test. We've probably maybe worked with coaches who, the data looks good, but it's not. I didn't see that, or I know what I've seen, or a head of recruitment or a scout that says, no, I don't know, I could just tell. I could just tell that he, after 2 minutes of watching him, that he wasn't for us. So we've all had that one. And I think obviously at this level, at this side, biases are quite obvious and quite inferred. Narrative bias, you know, we've heard the ones where, oh, he's a winner, and you just then focus on building the story around the fact that you think he's a winner, which is obviously to suit the perspective of the teller rather than the evidence in the room. Outcome bias, probably the most obvious one in football. We all are susceptible to that, but really trying hard not to judge decisions on results, which is obviously extremely hard externally, but how can you manage that noise internally? Confirmation bias, obviously this is a common one as well, like look at the clips, these are the clips that show what I think, is probably not the best way to try and make decisions. And also like this, an interesting one that I found, like status quo, like actually let's keep things as they are, we've always done it like this, or this player's always been reliable for us, he's done the job for us. And actually you can start missing opportunities, obviously when you think like that and make better decisions. On the other side is obviously the paralysis by analysis, don't need to explain that term, where things like the insight gap become a factor. I think I spoke about this before, but how much the insight gap, as I would define it, is how much time are you spending engineering, creating, visualizing data, information, versus how much time you're spending using it, applying it. And if you're spending 80-90% of the time collecting and using it, probably argue the 10% might not be worth it. You need to try and recalibrate that. Again, the dashboard side of it, it's almost like it can actually confuse people. Go onto the dashboards just because the dashboards are there. It becomes the work instead of informing the work, and it doesn't actually get used. And I think it's sort of who are the dashboards for? Is it because we have a data team and they need to be producing something, but actually we want them to produce something that's going to get used? The black box problem, obviously now with a lot of more advanced data science and algorithms, being able to explain these things in simple terms to coaches or end decision makers. So if we have an algorithm that rightly or wrongly places player X above player Y, and you are able to question why, and the answer that comes back isn't either clear or understood, obviously loses a lot of traction and cadence with certainly football coaches and decision makers. I think it's important as well that there are still biases at this side. People might think, oh, we use data, like it's not biased. I don't sort of subscribe to that really. I think a couple of biases to watch out for at this side: complexity bias, so mistaking something that's complex for something that's actually good. Because it looks good, sounds clever, actually, is it being impactful? I like this phrase and I just kept it in. Weaponized metrics, probably there's some nicer, softer phrases, but I preferred this one. But using isolated stats, even within teams I've seen this, where one department will pick a stat that they know is going to absolutely harpoon someone else, and people use data to win meetings, not to make better decisions. And then another interesting one, see a lot at this end as well, is survivorship. So in terms of looking for actually only focus on success stories. Like we'd all love to have recruitment processes like Liverpool, Brighton, Brentford, but actually forgetting all the ones that have tried to imitate them and failed, we don't take the learnings from them. So there's some of the sort of more nuanced biases to be careful for at that side. Also, interestingly here, people who heard me present before, and the psychology part of me loves a continuum. And if you look at the bottom axis on insight, quite naturally looks like a subjective to objective feel as well, with that middle bit being sort of a sweet spot, which actually speaks to my philosophy, but an interesting aside. Obviously, in the middle bit is where you're trying to be, make as much impact as you can. And how do you do that? Well, in football, I don't think it's the insight, the information itself that doesn't create clarity. It's the people that use it and how they use it that do. So what is alignment, or alignment to what? I think it's easy to mistake alignment for thinking the same. If you took a straw poll of people in training grounds, they might think, oh, we're all aligned, so we all think the same. That's not the case. It's not agreement. It's a shared lens and vision that means everybody's pulling towards the same direction. Now, interesting one, who sets it? Who would it be best if set it? Speaking up here as a sporting director or having been one, actually the best, if leadership could set this, if ownership could set this, that would be most powerful. But if there was, and there's three different sort of key areas to hit when I've reflected on my time, that I think if you get these right and you can be clear on them, it really helps with alignment across a number of different decisions. Number one's competitive strategy in terms of what are we, what type of club are we, how are we going to compete against all the other clubs in our division that we're competing against? Are we going to be a development club where it's all about the academy and getting minutes? Are we a results and promotion club? I don't personally think you can just be that. There's got to be more how. Are you a trading club? Are you a club where there are financial constraints based off X, Y, and Z? I think these are all really important things to be clear about so you can start making the bigger picture strategy aligned towards what ownership want or what hopefully they're able to articulate. Two, I do think this is important, football identity, how we want to play and win on the field. Having a clear one really helped early doors, which I'll speak to briefly. But being adaptable, having a philosophy and sticking to it rigidly till you become predictable is probably not a good idea either. And that balance between principles versus solutions is a really difficult one to take. I think key for that previous one before I move on is if you don't get that right, you can have departments preparing for different sports, literally, and trying to have that alignment between preparing for the same game style is really important. And the final one actually is something that I thought a lot more about. I was really fortunate enough to work with Ian at Bolton in my last role, and his thinking, obviously some of the stuff that he's since published around actually making decisions, rules actually set out clearly amongst different levels of the club for how we make decisions. So think of them as guardrails to protect for when shit hits the fan, basically. A series of non-negotiables maybe to think of and prevent panic, ego, emotion or politics from affecting decision making, which is obviously, I think we'd all agree they're quite important to avoid. Stuff like, even just, I'm throwing phrases out, fit over talent, evidence over ego, process over personalities, just things that you can come back to when that going gets tough. But even with alignment, good ideas can still fail. So it's how we use the aligned insight and how we turn that into impact. So it's probably the main sort of content where I'm going to give a few examples now. I know it's been quite conceptual so far. So it's the balance, in my opinion, between these three things that I've seen in my experiences, successful projects, strategies, processes that have been put into place. The ones that have had the longest term lasting impact tick these three circles: people, process, and proof. So number one is people. Like, do the people believe in the project? Are they going to... Does it matter to them? Is it important? Is it the right question? Is it worthwhile? If you only have this, though, we've all probably worked in and around a passion project where a coach or a leader has a really exciting idea that they're really giddy about, that they really want to put a lot of time into, we invest into it, we build the presentations, but it's something that doesn't have the process and rigor behind it, and like 2 weeks later, it sort of quietly fades out, nobody mentions it, and we move on to the next one. Process obviously has to be quality detail that is respected by the coaches and people that you're wanting to influence. A clear, obviously, repeatability is obviously clear here, key here, and it's got to be fit for purpose. And really, my big thing is it in football language? Is it impacting what happens on the grass? One to watch out for there, obviously, a bit like we spoke about before, those tick box exercises. If you only have the process, but nobody's bought into it and wants to use it, you get them dashboards that are just sat unopened, even though they could be really, really good. And the proof bit is arguably the most crucial bit for the longer term, sustained success of it. Does it work? Does the process and the idea, can we marry them together and get it to work and prove that it works? This is, you get a bit more rare to get just proof, but almost like, think of it as those one-off ideas that, maybe recruitment finds a gem and then can't find the gem again, and eventually they're probably not there anymore. Obviously, we're aiming for this bit. Now, it isn't linear, like it isn't just tick this box once, tick each box once and you're good to go. It's repeatable. Can you do each of them, reinforce each other as time goes on and strengthen it? So what I wanted to do is provide a couple of examples of strategies or processes that have gone well during my time. At Bolton, we had a blank, as I mentioned, had a blank canvas, and that was also the same for recruitment. So we're able to put some scouting processes in place that we're really proud of, still hopefully leaving a bit of a legacy. And when I look back, the people element of this was the blank canvas meant we had to be passionate about it because there wasn't something, we had to step into the space. So people were excited and passionate about that chance to do a creative project at such a big club. Also, got the coaches and the manager on board earlier because we aligned it to playing style and aligned it to a language and something that they could buy into. So it wasn't a project where we were delivering to them. It felt like a joint project that we were delivering together. The process bit, didn't mean to press that, sorry. The process bit is the football first, like it's a football problem first, not a data problem or a psychology. We've got to relate it back to football language. And the process that we put into place at Bolton allowed accountability and transparency of scouting, of scouts' verdicts. We were able to collect our own scouting data and be able to revert subjective and objective metrics on recruitment always back to wide-angle video, which I think was really important in creating that accountability and transparency. And then quickly on the field, obviously success happened, particularly early, which is obviously great for getting that buy-in and reinforcement, but not just outcome-based sort of feedback. It was actually when we did from the recruitment perspective, the profiles of the players that we delivered did actually pass the eye test, and there is some element of you have to pass that at some point. So the players were who we said they were. There was no shocks or surprises, which obviously was good at getting that in. The more interesting one, the reason I've chosen the penalty is not because it's sexy or anything. It's more, I'm not going to speak too much about the detail, but actually how many times, because this was a longer term project over 18 months, how do you get buy-in early and continue it? So this actually went 3 cycles round this diagram. The first one, obviously, the question set by Gareth was clear, obvious. Like if you don't get excited about that, trying to improve and impact that, then you're probably in the wrong game. So that was easy to see, easy to understand and be passionate that we wanted to get better at this. We were then afforded time and resource and expertise with Reece and Oz and others to build like a world-class, world-leading process and detail around it with, the key here is clear recommendations that were in football language. So what we did then is to get to the proof bit, we fed that back reasonably early and quite far out before the tournament. That then gained traction with Gareth, the technical staff and the coaches, which was obviously really important to build that confidence. Then back round to the people bit on cycle 2, because there was buy-in and belief and excitement from the coaches about it, it was then how do we impact the players and get their buy-in and belief, because they're ultimately the ones that are going to have to go and execute this for us. So that was shared with the players, which took us back into the process, which meant we had to refine the detail for the players, make it presentable and bespoke to them. And key part in this one was giving them ownership, that this was for them and could be shaped by them. And then as that then became more on the grass, more workshops, the detail improved and there was more belief starting to feel that we were prepared. And that obviously leads sort of to the last bit, which is more the external loop that probably everybody else sees. Around this project was actually right. The best part about I spoke yesterday with somebody who asked me this question, and it was actually what would have happened if you'd lost against Colombia on penalties. Well, actually, the best part about it, and when we knew the project had been successful, was the night before or the press conference before the game when Gareth said, when he was asked, we are prepared. That was the win because we'd never been prepared before. Every previous manager had said it was a lottery. So obviously then when the process then went out, and some of it held up under pressure, some of it didn't, but some of it did, obviously that outcome reinforced, and then over a longer term there has been a cultural shift since that 2018. So So just to go through 2 or 3 briefly to finish off, like commonalities that I've seen, not just across these projects. I hope I've not just had 2 successful projects in that period of time. But a powerful shared why for people is important across both. Importance of keeping the main thing. It's not, is it interesting or is it important? We're not a university or an educational function. We're here to have performance. So asking those questions to get belief is important. And then built trust and shared that clarity, built clarity and trust through getting people in. So as sporting director, you're getting ownership in, or manager, or managing the recruitment team. If you're an analyst, you've got to recruit people and make the coaches feel like you're delivering with them, not for them, things like that. On to process. Started with a football problem, not a data problem. That's the thing I speak about all the time, and I'm really passionate about that. The translation, like translating that then into key deliverables that coaches and players can actually use in football language. I think that interpreter role of the sporting director and leaders is becoming even more important all the time. And building transparency and accountability in the process, like you're entrusting me with this resource and trusting me with this important project that we've really all bought into. Here's how we're doing it, not this guarded, closed sort of silo approach. And then eventually actions speak louder than words. How many times we think, oh, he's going to say and do all this, and you never hear back from it, or it takes 6 months to even get one action. Like getting buy-in, visible improvements that stakeholders can see early and often. So that sort of is my experiences of how to deliver and sort of turn long-term insight and build it into a long-term sustainable impact, which is the key of what we're all trying to do. And hopefully that's given a bit of a picture of that. Almost just a quick look ahead now at the end, like to the what's next, the future, and some sort of pitfalls and things to sort of be aware of and try to be cognizant of. Obviously, now we can't get away from it, even if we wanted to. That tech and AI, the growth, I saw some crazy numbers in terms of investment into sports tech, even this year compared to the previous 3 years combined, some crazy like that. It's going to supercharge how much we have. So we've actually got to be quite careful that this next generation is going to produce even more, even faster, and it doesn't, as I've tried to explain, doesn't mean better. So how do we manage that noise is going to be even more important. I think the role then, as I've said a few times, is shifting from finding insight and generating it to actually creating that alignment, particularly in leadership roles, where the information moves faster than people can actually understand it and process it. So how do we make sure we keep aligned, keep the guardrails on, and make sure that we keep impacting? My thoughts on this, and then again, as I've said right at the beginning, this is just my thoughts. I think AI, what it's going to do is generate, obviously, it'll close the insight gap, basically. It'll do some of the heavy lifting, some of the processes that take us time to reduce to 80%, hopefully down to below 50%, and we can get, actually, which is the most important commodity in the game, regardless of all this tech, is can we get the experienced, insightful people to help make and inform decisions and turn that insight into impact? And that is always going to be the key in my perspective and from my thoughts. So that's why I wanted to use this talk to try and get people to think about how they're impacting, if there's different ways they can use to try and impact, but also give them that ownership that in this new era and all this scaremongering about what AI isn't going to do and tech isn't going to do, a good, insightful practitioner who's well-moraled is never going to go out of fashion.